did a very large scale research. They are looking at employee satisfaction, commitment, and engagement. Okay, and everybody knows that since you are all HR professional, if your employee is engaged, committed, and also satisfied at work, the productivity usually goes very high. Okay, so Harvard Business Review did a very extensive research over 7,000 people. In the US, they find out what is the single most important factor that drive that. Okay, and they said, okay, is it the salary? Yes, salary plays some part. Fringe benefit? Yes, it plays some part. But the key factor is, do the staff perceive their boss as good leader? Okay, that's the key. They plot almost a perfect graph like that. So whatever they find something like that, they say, oh, I can graduate my PhD. They find a very good correlation. So the better they think that boss is a good leader, the leadership effectiveness is high, the employee satisfaction go up, the commitment go up, the engagement go up, and vice versa. Okay? So that actually prompts me to ask one question. Do different generations have different leadership expectation? Okay? That's my research topic. So that's what I want to find out. Okay? So I did a mixed method study. Sorry for some boring stuff. So it's not the context, right? So I did both quantitative online survey. The sample is not too big, but enough to generate significant result. Unfortunately, the questionnaire is very long. In Hong Kong, it's very hard to ask people to complete a very long survey. So, but statistically, I found enough samples. And then I also did focus group, both Gen X and Gen Y, and asked them about similar questions and see if there are any difference. I did also the content analysis on that, and I do compare both the quantitative and qualitative results. Okay, so first of all, I asked a question. The questionnaire is based on 6 attributes of leadership. Okay, are they sensitive? Are they intelligent? Are they dedicated at work? Are they flexible? Are they dynamic? Have energy? Tyranny. So the last 2 are negative. Too authoritative, manipulative. Masculinity is not just male. Masculinity in social science means what? Always want to win, want to compete, right? So those 6 attributes, I asked people to fill it out. First key finding, very interesting key finding. Okay, when the result come in, I fully expected a very different result, but I was wrong. Okay, actually, if Mao Wan is a symbol of good leaders, essentially both sides, when they describe good leaders, are more or less the same. Okay. So basically, the light is really not, this is actually another bar. Okay, the light bar is the pre-80 generation, the Gen X. The darker bar is the post-80 generation. So both are not significantly different. Both are want high sensitive, high intelligence, high dedication, high dynamism, and low in tyranny and low in masculinity. There are no significant difference when they describe good leaders. Okay, I was surprised. I thought that, my initial thinking, sensitivity, the Gen Y must be very sensitive. If the leaders really demonstrate caring, that must be much higher. But in fact, no. Actually, Gen X also wants that as well. Okay, so there are no significant difference between the 2. Okay, however, I asked the same question to describe the actual boss. The actual boss. Before, that graph was to say, describe an ideal leader to me. Now my second question is, using that as a benchmark, describe your boss now. and find out that there are significant gaps of what they think ideal leaders should be and the actual boss. So there are significant gap. Okay, and the gaps are similar across Gen X or Gen Y. Both see that the leaders are not as good as they would hope for. Okay? So that's common sense, right? Why do I need to carry out such a research, right? Everybody knows if my boss is very good, then everybody will be happy, right? Unfortunately, Hong Kong is becoming a very unhappy place because we have a lot of unsatisfaction to our boss, and it can be also to our leaders in our Hong Kong society as well. Okay, so to sum it up for the first key finding, most managers do not use the right leadership for their staff, no matter it's Gen X or Gen Y. Okay. Yet, why we see Gen Y have more problems is that simply they are more vocal. They have more chance to change job. Before in our years, changing job, unemployment rate is still at 5-6%, right? Right now, the last few years is always 3.something%. So they can always change job. They can always go on the street. And right now they not only change job, the number one of losing people when I talk to HR is they go on working holiday in Australia, in Europe, right? So they have much more choice. They know that they cannot afford a house anyway, right? May as well have fun in life. So if they cannot stand the boss, they would have more options than our previous generation. Okay, so both generations show dissatisfaction to the boss. Why Gen Y is more prominent? The problem is that they have more chance to voice out their dissatisfaction. Okay, now, remember I did both quantitative and qualitative. The qualitative result finds that by running different focus group and when they talk about leaders, things like that, that confirms essentially the quantitative result, meaning that both generations, pre-80 generation, post-80 generations, they all want leaders to develop others, want to have clear instructions and delegating work to them. Both very much want them to be role models, and both want them not to judge them too quickly. Okay? Yet, when I did the focus group, I found the post-80 and the post-90 generation especially emphasized a few things more. It was also mentioned in Gen X, but not as much. They emphasized personalized relationship. A few of them, when I interviewed with them, they really have a hope that after work, they can go and have a drink with their boss, they can socialize with them, they can build personalized relationship. In our generation, at least in my generation, that is an exception rather than a norm. In current generation, they really want to see if I can have have some personalized relationship. Okay, they want communication. Both sides want communication, but the Gen Y wants two-way communication. Okay. Both sides want to be sensitive and care, but they want to be more individualized, really understanding the context, the situation. They also want them to be more adaptive to the staff's need. These are all mentioned by the older generation, but not as much. But these are really emphasized by the younger generation. In this side, the older generation, the Gen X, they really emphasize 最緊要有料. My boss really need to show substance. That's a very key things they want to say. I look up to my leader because I think they are really good. They have substance. They also feel secure, right? When people feel secure, they don't play that much politics. Usually when they don't feel secure, they play politics. Okay? Alright? So those are not as mentioned. Those are really heavily mentioned by the older generation. Maybe, perhaps it's because 人生閱歷, the Gen Y lack that in-depth understanding of that, but the Gen X knows that. So these are more emphasized. Okay? Alright. Now, the second key finding, that's very important. a little bit of jargon here. Explicit, implicit leadership gap. So that's essentially is, if that is the standard of good leaders, if there is a gap between my actual leader, that's an explicit, implicit gap. Okay? So the bigger the gap is, the lower the leader-follower relationship. Because I don't have a boss that I look up to, that impact my relationship with the boss, and in fact have a very negative impact on job satisfaction and organization commitment. That's significant data to show that there's strong relationship. So to put it into perspective, like both generations have similar standard of leadership. They all feel Mao Wan is good leaders, okay? All right. And then they compare to the actual boss. If that's match, then that leads to good relationship with boss, that leads to good job satisfaction, that leads to good organization commitment. On the other hand, if the actual boss is really having a big gap between what they expected and what actually is, then there's bad relationship, bad job satisfaction, and bad communication, commitment to the organization. This is a little post that I grabbed from my Facebook, my Gen Y. They said, 有時候拼搏唔係為咗錢，唔係為咗職位，係一個我認同、一個明白同埋支持、鼓勵我嘅上司。唉，事與願違啦。To put it into English, they said, sometimes when I work hard, it's not because of money, not because of the promotion and position, it's because when I have a boss that understands me, supports me, what the reality is so brutal. Okay, and just grab that from Facebook. Okay, so essentially, the bigger the gap, my standard of good leaders and my actual boss, the worse the leader-follower relationship, and the good relationship means better commitment. Good relationship with the boss also means better job satisfaction. Okay, this result is proven both qualitatively and quantitatively. Okay. So, and you say, oh, it's the same, then what? So the key thing is interesting that I find out is that the post-80 generation are more sensitive. So although we look for the similar good leadership, okay, however, the sensitivity of the Gen Y is higher. What does it mean? So if the gap is just a little bit, they will be very turned off. Okay, so it really boils down to really need the leaders to really establish stronger relationship. Okay, that's the key factor of making your staff happy, engaged, committed, and satisfied with work. Okay, so let's hear a few. When I did interview, just a few of the.
公司有做緊 admin 嘅。哦，想問下你咧，其實咧喺平時老闆，你覺得老闆啲乜嘢嘅特質咧，令到係你覺得好欣賞嘅，或者特別覺得有啲老細咧係啲好唔欣賞嘅特質係啲乜嘢咧？我諗係俾到我哋有一個好輕鬆嘅工作空間啦，即係我諗當然friendly 係好緊要嘅，即係同佢有一個嘅關係啦。二嚟就係即係佢會係去真係去真係用個心去到唔係淨係為咗 make target 嘅，因為而家好多老闆都係 make target 咁但係咧，如果當個老闆我哋都明白佢都要 make target，但係咧佢兼顧到我哋同事嘅一啲嘅需求咧，咁樣或者可能一啲嘅心理嘅因素或者生活上面嘅需要啊咁樣，我諗係幾好嘅。even 佢幫唔到我哋咁，我哋幾 appreciate
to the individualized need. Okay, let's hear another one.
Oops. 我係從事採購業嘅，咁對我嚟講咧，點解係為之一個好嘅領袖咧？第一，首先要同佢嘅下屬啦建立一個良好嘅關係啦。 如果一個唔識同下屬建立關係嘅老細咧，就自己咧都好咧，到最後
Again, the first thing they talk about is relationship.
咁另外咧，我覺得最差嘅領袖咧係唔識得點樣體恤下屬咯。
Not sensitive, not attentive to the needs.
例如有啲即係有鑊氣啦，有咩有嘢發生啦，佢第一個時間應該係承擔，跟住解決問題，而唔係去將佢嘅壓力施加落去啲下屬度，因為下屬嗰面壓力嘅時候，佢係 responsible 啲咩？咁如果一個差嘅領袖咧，會點樣影響我嘅工作咧
What's the impact of a bad leader?
如果有一個好差嘅領袖咧，咁我會好唔想做呢份工啦，因為香港揾工好簡單，唔需要因為一個即係一份工而去好似影響自己嘅生活咯。咁如果一個好嘅領袖咧，咁我會願意，就算幾辛苦都好啦，我都願意喺佢下邊打拼，就係咁啦。
So I've got actually many stories. I'll just give you a few out of my research. Okay. So, but I also asked them another question during my research. Describe to me the other generations. Okay. And all of them, when I asked this question, the whole ground is on lips, right? They will describe the next generation don't understand me. Typically, the younger generation, they all say, oh, the boss is so inflexible, they never listen to my good ideas, they are too authoritative. And when I asked the Gen X to describe the Gen Y, they all said they are all lazy, not committed, and they always want to jump ship, they're always on the cell phone, similar to what you described. However, my research earlier saying that they're both looking up at similar leadership attributes. So there are actually a lot of similar, but in terms of perception, there are a lot of negative impression to the others. Okay? So, and then unfortunately our media has exaggerated the stories. Like look at all the report, mostly they are, because of Hong Kong media, they need to sell and only negative stories sell. Positive stories don't sell. Okay, so that gives a little bit of bias